Despite intense rounds of diplomacy between Russia, the United States and NATO, there has been no breakthrough to de-escalate the situation along the Russia-Ukraine border. The latest, NATO has turned down one of Russia's main demands, that NATO stop expanding its reach eastwards towards Russia. Russia wants NATO to return to the positions that existed in 1997, the year the Russia-NATO Founding Act was signed. Russia says the strengthening of NATO's military near its borders poses a national security threat. NATO's Secretary General on Sunday said that the bloc would never pull allied troops from member states that had joined since 1997, but it is ready to discuss arms reduction with Russia. Russia's other demands include mutual security guarantees in Europe and non-deployment of short and intermediate range missiles within reach of its territory. Meanwhile, ballistic missile launchers are said to have been spotted moving west through Russia. This as the Kremlin said that the standoff over Ukraine was at an extremely dangerous phase. Videos have appeared on social media showing Iskander-M launchers being taken from a train in Russia's far east. However, according to a Russian group that monitors military deployments, the final destination of the launchers and the purpose of their transportation were not clear. These alarming developments come even as Moscow continues to deny having any military expansion plans towards Ukraine. Joining us live from Moscow for more on this report is Stuart Smith. Stuart, thank you for your time and thank you very much for joining us at this hour. There seems to be growing discontent between Russia and NATO over the Ukraine border issue. What is stoking this dispute?
Well, it started with a problem that the Kremlin says has been going on for 30 years, which it defines as NATO expansion. The idea that the NATO military alliance since the Cold War has been adopting more and more Eastern European countries. Russia says that's not just a threat to its country, but also breaks some kind of verbal promise that was made to it once the reunification of Germany took place, with the East and West rejoining. Now, NATO says no such verbal promise was ever made, and regardless, there's definitely no promise in legal text. However, Russia says now is the time it wants to clear all of this up by getting guarantees from the West, the United States and NATO, on exactly the issues you outlined. Having said that, we've now just had a week of talks, Russia with the United States directly, Russia with NATO, and Russia with the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe. And after that week of talks, no ground was found for compromise on the key issues. And similarly, although NATO was definitely not willing to compromise on its issues, the request from the United States to Russia to withdraw its troops away from the Ukrainian border was also not heeded. So no compromise on the big issues from either side. And that means this week, what the Kremlin is waiting for is a written response from the United States on exactly what happens next. And on that written response, Russia will take action.
Well, Stuart, Russia continues to deny that it has plans to invade or expand their military towards Ukraine. Yet in the latest, ballistic missile launchers can be seen being transported through Russia. What is likely to be the US and NATO reaction to the latest, and what dangers does this dispute pose to the security in Europe?
Yeah, there are a number of drills ongoing, some planned, some not. This one actually is not one of the drills that Russia had warned other countries or publicly declared was going to take place. This is one, it's called a readiness drill with the eastern military bases, eastern military troops moving long distances, the Kremlin says. They're practicing moving long distances across Russia and are indeed going west. Now, the Kremlin does say this is purely a military drill. At the same time, military analysts who study Russia say this kind of movement can easily be disguised as a drill. We have no assurances and there's no public information on what exactly they'll be doing or where they are going. And this comes as today the Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko has approved Russian-Belarus joint military drills, which will take place in February and are due to take place in southwestern Belarus, which is where Poland meets Ukraine. So not something that you would do if you were trying to cool down the conflict between, or the potential conflict between Russia and the West, and indeed NATO troops and NATO military allies will not be happy that Russia is moving more troops towards the west when it's already accumulated what Western military intelligence says is around 100,000 troops already near Ukraine.
Live from Moscow, Stuart Smith, thank you very much for your insights and for talking to us today. WION is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news on the move.